Hi, everyone. Welcome to our last of the three series of looking at this really amazing center called the G Center. The first webinar, we kind of looked at the way that it's how we're connected in space and time to the totality and the origin when there was this singularity and then there was this something that created a fracturing, a shattering, and led to us expanding then outward into lines and then the condensing of matter until we, through billions of years, created humans on the planet Earth and having a G center. And then the second one, we looked at the gates of the vessel of love. The thing is, through the understanding of our design and through grounding in presence, through awareness, we begin to surrender to the direction of our form. Our form has a direction. And this surrender aligns us with our unique purpose. It brings to expression the fullness of love. And as we relax then into our passenger, we enable the flow of the consciousness field to stream through us, to dance in the differentiation that we are here to share. And then we meet our true self. We meet that bridge between the soul's essence and its purpose. And that's, in a way, what we're talking about with the G Center, that there is this bridge between direction and embodiment. The vessel of love in movement on a trajectory. We are part of an ordered universe, even though sometimes it seems rather random and chaotic. And so in understanding the nature of human design and that design is universal to all forms, then the microcosm, us, can then lay the foundation for understanding the macrocosm. So this is the first step in understanding the nature of the totality. It begins in the center. And in the case of design, this is in the G Center. Right? We can understand the nature of the totality through the microcosm of each individual being. Last time that we met, we were looking at how there's the background program that holds us in this illusion and provides then the backdrop for our experiences here on Earth. And in that background program, there is these two great crosses that are holding us together. The cross of the Sphinx, which is about direction, and the cross of the vessel of love, which is about love. And our existence is held together then through that illusion, through the magnetic monopole. And so it's the G Center that is integrating the genetic and the personality aspects of the microcosm totality, the self. So at the core of the G Center then is the magnetic monopole. And you can see that on the slide, you just see gate 2 down at the bottom in black. And this is where the magnetic monopole rests. And this is what we call the driver. And it is what is giving our life, or the life, its direction, the magnetic monopole. And the magnetic monopole is part of the cross of the Sphinx. There's 2 crosses, and this is the Sphinx. Sphinx people are what Ra called the keepers of the world. It's beautiful, huh? That Sphinx people are aspects of the global totality that is maintaining our link to the universal self and to our evolutionary direction and our evolutionary development. We look just shortly at the gates of the vessel of love, just to review, because we're looking at the G Center and it's important to have that connection to the fullness of what is happening there, because that's what is this microcosm that we are. So this function of the magnetic monopole is holding then the separateness of the human being together in the self. And so it's the glue is what is holding us together in these forms that we're in. And it's maintaining the difference of the separation. So it's the magnet at the center that is creating the vessel that holds the life. And each of us in this sense are vessels. I mean, we're all containers of life that are held together in our separateness through our monopole. Monopole is a singularity, poles only pulls to it. And that's an important thing, because, you know, we forget that when we hear the word the driver, and when we think of ourselves moving in space, we think that we are moving. But in reality, we are here, and when we stay present to it, the existence that we're here to experience is brought to us through the magnetic monopole. It draws to us what is our life. So the paradox then is the element of our separateness then is also creating the instrument for our oneness. And this is what we call love, because the monopole, it only attracts, and it keeps attracting. There's no separateness. So as with the totality, all of life's monopoles on this planet together are holding us all together. You know, so we have this cohesive whole, this matrix that we're living in. And that's where we have the love, both individual as well as universal. So that's the monopole has the potential then to attract the love, and that is then manifested through this great cross that is of these two oppositions that are in the G center that create the vessel of love, which is through gate 15 and 25 and 46 and 10. We see the gates of the Sphinx. They are what is holding us in place through these hexagrams, the Sphinx, you know, and so we have, and we all have this, regardless of whether you have them activated in your design or not. We all have the gates of the Sphinx. We all have the gates of all the gates of the G center. So we have hexagram 1, which is the example, which is our place in the now, 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 now. And gate 13, which is the witness, direction that is based on the past. Where have I been? Where have I been? Where have I been? And gate 7, hexagram 7, the leader, which is direction by looking forward. And you know these through collective. The gate 13 is the abstract sensing circuit, experiential circuit, where we've been, I've experienced things. And gate 7, which is the collective logic, which is in the flow, in the rhythm, and recognizing the pattern that's going to lead us to the future in a safe way that we thrive through. And then hexagram 2, which is the direction, the receptive, the driver. An image of the G center with both of the crosses in it. Isn't it beautiful the way it lines up? I mean, it's just so harmonic and in balance. And how did that happen? I mean, it's so amazing. The magnetic monopole has a binary function in us, in our humanness. It is the key to our direction in this incarnation. It's guiding us out of the womb, out into life. It's our geometry driver, our geometric driver. It puts us on our fractal, on our movement, our trajectory towards our destiny. And in design, it's guiding us along the axis of the lunar nodes, which is what Ra called the life cycle, where we have this movement from the south node to the north node as we move along on the axis of that with our sun and our earth. We are in a global program. It's really important to recognize that, because we become so in our world here, you know, it feels so much that we forget that there is this interconnectedness. That's what human design brings us back to, is the sense that there is this interconnectedness to everything, that it's all cohesive, but also interdependent, inter-influenced. What we need to understand about the nature of the program is two things. The first thing to understand is the nature of the human design wheel, as you're looking at here. Ra would point out the importance of looking at the oppositions in the wheel, because they represent the yin-yang, positive, negative nature of things. So the 6 lines that are in gate 1, they're all yang lines. And then the opposite of that, this is the biverse, right? We live in a biverse. The opposite of 1 is 2, and those are all yin lines. So wherever you go in the wheel, you're going to be seeing the opposition. And so the way Ra described it was, it's like there's a print and then the negative. Not to use a moralistic term on negative, but that there's this, you know, the inverse of it. Everything has its opposite, and is in an intrinsic relationship to it. So we would see that in terms of the Tao, the way, the movement of this existence, that they are one thing out of two polarities. And this was something that Ra, I was listening to him and he said this, I thought was really interesting. He says, remember that the neutrino that goes through the two goes through the one too, because they're in opposition, right? So when it makes that movement through, it goes through that, and then vice versa. If it goes through the two, then it goes through the one, because they're exactly opposite of one another. So there is this oneness that is there through the interconnectedness of it. The G center, then, as you can see, is structured on 8. I've put little arrows there to show you what the one of the crosses is, just to differentiate it out from the other. When you look at that, you can see the vessel of love is a bit more complicated than the Sphinx in that it bridges, it's on the cusp of two different astrological signs. And they are the points of our equinoxes and solstices, the vessel of love. So when we have a shift from summer solstice and winter solstice, when we have the shift of the seasons then, which is always right around the 21st of the month of June or December. And then the equinoxes, which equinox just means an equal distance between the two, which is spring and autumn. Those are what's part of the vessel of love. And then we have the Sphinx that are in the associated with 4 signs of the zodiac. So the 7 is in Leo. It's called the army. It's in Leo. Gate 1, the creative, is in Scorpio, as you can see there. Gate 13, which is the fellowship of man, is in Aquarius. Makes sense, doesn't it, when you think about Aquarius and what it sort of represents. And gate 2 is in the gate of the receptive is in Taurus. Form, embodiment, flesh, direction. And then those cusp gates for the vessel of love. So these are the 2 great crosses of that astrological zodiac, and they mark then those 4 seasons that are part of our interregnums. Here you again see the gates that are part of the vessel of love. And I just put in the keynotes of just the names of the hexagram and of the gate. In terms of people that are part of the vessel, this is the total self that must first represent its separateness and its capacity then to transcend separateness through love. To transcend separateness through love. And then out of that recognition emerges our human nature. So when we just had a vessel pass through in June. When we have the weather of the vessel in the transit field, it's a time for us to discover self-love. And then through self-love, the love of humanity. So, for example, if you think about, as I was saying, it's around the 21st of the month. So winter solstice is around the 21st, 22nd, depending on the year, of December. This is when the Earth is in gate 15. No, I think that Earth is 10. In 10, yeah. So we have then this grounding in the Earth that's trying to find our stability in the humanity that's around us, right? So the way of the vessel is to come to self-love through recognizing our separateness, and then through that, the recognition that can emerge out that transcends the separateness into the recognition of love and the interconnectedness. So in Christmas, we have things like Christmas celebration. And it's really in order to bring and meet the humanity that's within us. It's within the cross itself. So this is where we get our grounding. And the sun is in the 10th gate, and it's bringing its light then to the potential of self-love, the light of the behavior of the self and self-love, and of what it is to be human, this process. So you could say that behavior then, gate 10, behavior leads you to the light. We have then again, the gates of the Sphinx, the gates of the keepers of the world. Ra defined this in a way. He said in these two great crosses that there are two formats. And we know, those of you who are familiar, pretty familiar with design, you know that we have the format energies that are connecting the root to the sacral center. This is in another context that we're looking at these formats. So this is the Sphinx format. We had the vessel format. The Sphinx format is made up of 4 gates of direction. So the first gate, the creative, is self-expression, the direction of the self into expression. The second gate, the receptive, is the direction of the self. The 7th gate is the army, the role of the self in interaction, right? Collective logic, right? Connected in part of the channel of the alpha. And then gate 13, in the sensing circuit, the fellowship of man, the openness of the self in interaction. One being the role of the self, and the other being the openness of the self. This is again showing the gates of the Sphinx. It's also interesting to notice that in the body graph, the 4 gates of the cross of love, the vessel of love, out of the G, can potentially activate 4 different centers. And the gates of direction, 3 of them go then into the throat, into expression, into manifestation, whereas the 2 is receiving the life force through the tantric channel of 214, the channel of the beat, designed of being the keeper of the keys. To see the context of the direction, because it can sound sort of like mystical or mysterious or romantic to say, you know, my purpose and my direction, and how is it just embodied in my genes accidentally through birth or something, which of course is all true. The precession of the equinox. Now this is really interesting because this is helping us to understand our movement in space and time. So in the G, we have these 2 crosses, and we also want to understand that we are living here in what we could call, what Ra called, a solar cell, this galaxy that we're in, a solar cell. And that includes the planets and our sun and everything inside this galaxy, our solar cell. And all of it is in movement with all of our planets around the sun. This is the inside of the cell. And the sun is giving us the inside of the cell information. So when we're sitting here on Earth, we're receiving the inside of this cell, this solar cell, the information, which is 70% of our imprint when we're born, from the sun. But this is in the context of home, right? The solar galaxy. And inside our solar home, our cell has, as you see here on this graphic, 64 points where osmosis can take place. Osmosis, it's absorbing and shifting and changing. 64 points where energy can come through into the cell from the outside. So it's fixed in the structure. The solar cell is fixed in its structure. Us in relationship to our sun and our orbits and our planets, they're fixed. They move in their orbits, but there is a regularity and a consistency in it. What comes in from the outside is not fixed. When I mean outside, I mean outside of our solar system. What comes in from the outside is not fixed. What we call, I'm teaching the course right now on the nature of the stars. We're learning about the fixed stars, and yet we call them fixed stars, and they're not fixed. Not in relationship to us, because everything's in movement. For example, if we think of the movement here, of the influence of the neutrinos that are coming through and what comes in through our outer ring, these 64 points, when Pluto is going to be entering into gate 61, which is part of as you can see on here, it's part of the influence of the Casa de Maya that we're in our direction in this time. When Pluto will go into gate 61, it will leave gate 54 where it is now in January of 2019. So that means that gate 61 is going to be conditioned by a stream of information coming from deep space, from the background star field, as well as the ones that are passing through Pluto. Pluto's orbit is around 248 years. It spends around 21 years in each astrological sign. And it can vary between 12 and 31 years. Actually, it was interesting to see on Pluto, it's, I forget which signs, Taurus and maybe Scorpio, that they can be longer and shorter at certain times of the year because of our Earth's elliptical orbit, the way we wobble. But anyway, so it means that Pluto can be in a gate for around 3 to 4 years. So it's in 54 now. What is 54 when we think about it? It's not in this G center, but we're in the time of transformation, the pressure for transformation. Right now, I think it's in line 4, you know, enlightenment and darkenment, the pressure to awaken to the light, or bring light to the dark, or experience the undarkening, which the planet seems to be going through. And Pluto wants to go in and turn everything upside down, right? So that it can be the phoenix and go in and burn it all out, burn out all that's not working, and bring us into the new. So we're in a real strong progress towards our 2027, where we're having the shift. Anyway, I'm talking about the ring that surrounds us in the precession of the equinoxes. You can read on here. Let's see if I can read it. Precession is a gradual backwards movement of the outer visible universe. So where we're sitting here on Earth, it appears to us that the universe is moving backwards. And it is used to determine the astrological age that we're in. So we're presently, consensus belief is, the age of the Piscean, the age of Pisces. And that's determined by the sun's position in the zodiac at the exact moment of the vernal spring equinox. So where the sun is on vernal equinox, which is the start of the astrological year, where it's at that equal point between winter and summer. Every 72 years, the sun backs up approximately 1 degree. Every 72 years, there's this movement. So then we have an astrological age, and that amount of time that it takes for the sun to move backwards through one complete astrological sign. And then there's 2,160 years, which is an astrological age. So 3,000 years ago, vernal equinox or spring, the sun was in the sign of Aries, like it is now.
Wow.
And that was in the time of Aries, during the age of the Egyptian empires. Now, if you were to have your astrological chart done right now by a Western astrologer, or your human design done right now by the human design program, we would be reading the way the Earth appears, or the relationship of the stars and the planets based on us here on Earth. Whereas in Vedic astrology, they actually read the positioning of the stars from the movement of the precession of the equinoxes. So I'm born in June under the sign of Cancer. And so I'm thought to be a Cancer. And yet in Vedic astrology, which is taking into account this slow movement of our orientation, would have me being born in Gemini. What this means is that there's a difference between what we are, our life here as humans is oriented towards, like these gates in the vessel of love, and the Sphinx, and what's actually out there. There's a difference. And that's what you see on this graph. So you see where the yellow, the gates are. Those are the gates of the vessel and the gates of the Sphinx. And then just in from that are numbers that are what's actually there. What's actually in the placement. That's the larger number. So you see gate 25 and you see gate 37. Gate 25 is part of the vessel of love. Gate 37 is just in from it. And then a little further in, you see gate 55. And that's what it will be in 2027. That's the shift. That's the shift that's happening. Where we're actually having, right now, gate 37, 40, 9, and 16 are part of the cross of planning. Everything in this time that we've lived in is about time, is about planning, about bonds and structures and institutions and details and skills. If you look where I put the little black square on there, that was in 2021 AD. That was the placement of the, you know, that's sort of when we established our Western astrology. This is the sky our astrologers use, right?
Oh, wow.
And this is then the one on the right is the real sky as seen on any smartphone. If you were just to, you know, put your, you know, you have these wonderful apps where you can hold your phone up and it'll tell you the names of the stars and what their positions are. It's different. Vernal equinoxes at a different time. That's what the box is showing. And it is because you can see up at the top where there's a little circle with little stars going around. Our Earth is on an axis and it turns around on its axis as it's also orbiting around the sun. But because it's tilted, you know, it moves and it points to a different position of a pole star up at the top there. So as we make this movement around on the Earth, it shifts the frequency that's coming in. It just, I mean, the whole point of this is to say it's shifting the frequency. We're receiving different things. And so we have our, we can look and see what the influence is that's coming through in terms of our direction and in terms of our love gates. So this is this format that's there that we can say, you know, normally we have that connected with the root sacral. But in this, we're looking at the energies that are formatting our direction and formatting our embodiment, our vessel. Everything that is about being human and being human in a universe process is about this binary, this dualistic process. And so when we look at people that are vessels, or we look at people that are sphinxes, they are somehow being containers for that. It wasn't until we had the advent of human design that we could actually make this distinction. And then we have that uniqueness of in our design where we have 88 degrees separating us from our point of birth and the point of the design, so that we have this shifting, this potential for, in a way you could almost call it a misalignment, you know, that creates the mutation. 4 points that more or less make squares that would normally be 90 degrees apart, but they're 88. And there will always be people that are born all the time, coming into the world regularly, who are either Sphinx people or vessel people. So here to find direction through the era that we're in, the time that we're in, or find love through the cross of the planning and direction through the cross of the Maya now. And that's shifting. Yeah, I wanted to show you also in the context of what's influencing us. I mean, it was really fascinating. If you go, you can see on the right slide, we're in the Milky Way, we're in a spiral galaxy, and we're actually in one of the arms of the spiral. So when we look out and we see the Milky Way, what we're seeing is actually our arm that's coming out from the spiral. So the Milky Way is a galaxy in which we live, and it's a spiral-shaped galaxy that contains around 200 billion stars, including our sun. And it's about 100,000 light years across and about 10,000 light years thick. So if you're in a place which has a very dark night, then you can actually see it like this. They show in these images, or the one on the right at least. And it looks like this thick band, because it's sort of a flat one like that, like it shows on the left picture. And then our sun, with this Earth orbiting around it, is at a rather distinct angle to it, as you can see there in that little drawing. So we're being influenced. I talked about these 64 portals that are coming in or filtering the deep space, the neutrinos that come in, into our solar cell. And the stars that we can see in our sky are a very small section of the same arm as ours. And then the vastness that goes out from that. Here again, we have the vessel. So again, these portals, this vessel, anyone who has these 4 gates has the format for love. The format, as I was talking about, that Ra referred to this. And what they're looking for is that love energy. And that love energy, think about what the cross of planning is. You see that there, the 3740, 9 and 16. Ashrams, communities, at least in the last times, social bonds, collectives, and just think of all the institutions, churches, organized religions, and non-organized religions, universities, and followings of, veganism, all kinds of things where we get this shared bond. This has actually been going on, this cross of planning, since 1615, right around the time of Shakespeare. It was a shift. He was the end of 15 and beginning of 16. So we have the 37 and the 40, creating the channel of community, a design of a part, seeking the whole. And we have gate 9, we have gate 16, influencing. So that's why I put those on there. So we see gate 10, behavior of the self. What is the behavior of the self? Well, the power to maintain the focus, the energy for the detail. The behaviors, the energy for the detail. So someone who comes in on the vessel will also be looking for love through the energy in the detail. They will be looking for love of the determination of the self, gate 46, through the gate of aloneness, the will or lack of will to provide for the needy. Like gate 40 that looks across at the 37 and says, I'm full, I don't need you. Or it says, okay, I'm open, I'll receive you. Gate 15, the rhythm of the self. Finding love through skills. I experiment, manifesting the pattern or not. And then gate 25, the spirit of the self. Finding love through the family, through loyalty, through friendship, awareness of who will or will not provide what is needed, as it comes up from the channel 1949. You think of the gates of the G center and the vessel, and you think, okay, behavior of the self. Yeah, but we're in that portal, taking in the theme of the cross of planning. It's the cycle that we're in. And as each cycle that we go through changes, then the energy of love will function through the next. And then you can see there what the next gates are. I haven't added them in. It's just interesting to see what it is now. This theme of how love has to be expressed in these 4 different ways since 1615 and until 2027. So then what's our direction? Go to the 16, gate 16. Tony Blair is an example. He's a Sphinx. He was the Prime Minister of England, especially during the war in Iraq. Direction. If you have the Sphinx gates as your cross, or the vessel gates as your cross, all that is saying is that you have the format. You're wearing it. That's what people are meeting when they connect with you. our magnetic monopole, it receives, it pulls towards us and guides. And our G center then is taking in information, it's taking in love, it's taking in direction from the outside. And it gets filtered then through the G center. And we get our direction and we get our love. And then the people that have the gates of either of these two crosses, then they have the format to bring direction, to bring love, but they don't have the complementary energy, that's what's so interesting. They have the gates of, for example, the Sphinx, but they do not have the gates of what is in the cycle now, which is this cross of Maya. Gate 61, the gate of mystery. Pressure of the unknown or the unknowable haunts the thinker's mind. So they don't have that complementary energy that's connected there because that energy isn't in those gates anymore. It's gate 13 isn't there anymore. It's there in terms of it's in the G center, but the influence that's coming in is through the gates of the Maya. So let's just look at those shortly. Gate 1, the drive to express one's individuality. Gate 1, the expression of the self, being expressed through the gate 32, or influenced through gate 32. Awareness of what can or cannot be transformed. Gate 32, is down in the spleen. Receives from gate 54, that power of transformation. So it is the brake on the drive of the 54. So, okay, gate 1, our creativity, the creative role model, the expression, self-expression. This is receiving the pressure for transformation from the 54, because it's actually in gate 32, this expression. People who are giving us our direction are feeling the pressure of transformation, but really looking for the direction that's going to be of what can be transformed or not. Does that make sense? Or gate 2, the gate of modesty, the direction of the self, right? The driver, connection to the geometry. We have this purity, this, the moment that we saw in the first webinar, when there was the shattering and all the crystals expanded out, and we have our trajectory we are on with our unique crystal. And yet the flavor now is gate 42, the gate of increase, the gate of growth. The direction is going to be in this embodiment, this drive, this movement, this direction of the self, in this power to complete. It's a format gate. The potential of growth in its power to mature through completion of each cycle. So we have the love being expressed through community, details, and skills, and the movement being about the potential of growth and its power to mature through the completion of each cycle. Gate 1, gate 2. Gate 13, this gate of...
For those of you who are listening to the recording, or you're live right now. So for those of you who are live right now, I will make sure that we edit this, and with the recording, we will send out the one without typos.
We know that this is fellowship of man. This is the listener, the role of openness. What is the direction and the spirit of the self? What is it that we're listening to? What is it that we're taking in? We have gate 61. We have the pressure of the unknown or the unknowable that's haunting. The direction is towards this. Ross says that when we leave the cross of planning and the cross of Maya in this way, the energy, the pressure for knowing the mysteries is just going to be gone. All this new age and, all this. He said human design couldn't have come out then. And then gate 7, the gate of the alpha, we all hold the alpha in us. We all have the gate of the role of the alpha, some dormant, some non-activated, some in a channel. But man is here to be alpha. Man is here to be alpha, here to lead, to move forward, to survive, and to lead towards the future. Logical direction, being influenced, or the direction being found through the preponderance of the small, through the gate of details. Manifestation as a verbal expression of the pattern or not. The gate of naming. This is, our Maya, right? The direction in our naming. The fixing of names is the foundation of the Maya. How do we build the Maya? The direction is about building the Maya and knowing the mysteries and having awareness of what is going to have transformation or not, or has the capacity for duration and transformation, and what is having the format energy of the capacity to come to completion. Because I'd mentioned in the very first class about the relationship of Freemasonry and the G Center. And so I was doing more research on it today. And this was kind of interesting. I found this slide where they have the G representing, or at the top of the compass that is, in the Masonic logo. It's called the G, and it has this compass, and it has, to me, it's like the vessel. So we have the G resting in the vessel, and the movement of the compass towards the pole star, which is like through the expression of the self into self-expression. You see that up at the top where it shows the pole star, and then through the precession of the equinoxes, we have the changing pole star. So we have the changing influence as we go through these eras that we exist in, these cycles. So this is what I found fascinating about it, that the G Center, called the G, just that letter G, and that in the symbols for Freemasonry, we have this, again, letter G, and it is actually representing, there's different explanations for it. Different explanations for what the history of Freemasonry is, that maybe it started in the very early times, 1200s, where there were the men who laid stones, the masons, and they would build things, and then they began to form gatherings, of Freemasons together, and then that evolved over time. But the first lodges that were created for Freemasonry happened in the 1700s, interestingly enough, because we have that cross of planning and Maya coming in. And the Freemasonry, if you follow some of the what their purpose and their goals and teachings are, it's a lot about service to mankind, community, hierarchy, and moving, transformation, moving up, knowing the mysteries, all the things that we look at with the cross of planning and the cross of the Maya. There are different ideas about what the G stands for. Some say it could be God, or the great architect of the universe, or geometry, direction, geometry. Pythagoras said that it's all in the number, it's all numbers. And in Masonry, we have the use of math and mathematical symbols, and it's been a large part of their teaching. So it's natural for people to assume that the G could possibly represent geometry. I mean, it's a compass, right? Geometry being considered one of the oldest and most noble sciences. But there's others who say perhaps it represents gnosis. Gnosis, gnosis, knowing, knowledge, and generation, and grand architect. And gnosis in its simplest form simply means know thyself. There's a writer called Eliphas Levi who lived between 1810 and 1875, and he wrote in his book called The Mysteries of Magic, the G, which Freemasons place in the center of the burning star, signifies gnosis and generation. the two sacred words of the ancient Kabbalah, and also the grand architect. So we get a sense of how Ra was able to identify what he received from the voice, because he said he just heard that it, or had the awareness that it was the G center, but all the pieces that were put together, then creating this sense of embodiment, love, presence in form as this, thisness, and direction. What I find so fascinating is that there is this relationship between the greater totality and it moves, and our solar cell, and it moves, and then there's a communication between the two that changes our direction and changes how we move towards love.
Beautiful. There was so much. I had some like questions and ahas, and we have some questions here. So it would now be a good time to do a few of those before we wrap up. Okay. So one of the ones that came through was if you could describe for us what the determinant factors are, which tell us if your design is either Sphinx or vessel. And that came when you were looking at one of the Sphinx vessel slides. Let's see if I can go back to one that you had, both of them on the slide. Are the differences between a love and a Sphinx?
The way that you can tell is you look and see what your personality sun is. So you look to see what gate it's in. And then it needs to be in a right angle. So there's two things. If it's going to be in the vessel of love, for example, then it means that you're going to have the 4 gates that are part of the vessel of love, which is gate 25, gate 15, gate 46, and gate 10. So if you have for your personality and design sun earth, those 4 gates, then you carry the vessel of love. If you have your personalities and design sun earths in the gates of the Sphinx, so we're going to have gate 7, gate 13, gate 1 and 2, then you are born under the incarnation cross of the Sphinx. And usually, don't most of the programs out there show what the cross is? Maybe some of them don't.
Our official ones do.
So that's how you can tell that. And so, and if you're still confused and can't figure it out, then send me or Andrea an email and we'll tell you.
Yeah, great. When you were talking about the precession of the equinox and you started describing, I had this glimpse of like having, and it was funny, the moon was in gate 43. So I had this breakthrough. I got all excited and I was like, I'm seeing something and I don't really know how to describe it. The way that we see all that geometry. So we have the ray of mandala, the mandala wheel, at least the outside, right? With all the hexagrams, the numbers, the signs, astrological symbols. On that page, you have the love and the direction. So the gates of the G. And then we have all of these symbols inside, which are geometric shapes, which show us the movement and the keys to each of how that is being expressed in the world. So is that the only place that we have showing of movement of how the energy works? Like you said, example, gate 2 is moving towards or having expression in growth, right? The direction is growth right now. So if the direction is growth right now, can we say this relational field between the different aspects of the hexagrams can be shared not just with the love gates, but and the Sphinx gates, but also with other gates? Like if we were to go other gate activations, just anything other than the G, can we see the relational field, like say between 54 going inward to any kind of other? Did Ra come up with anything like that?
Possibly. I mean, the point of this is the direction and the vessel, and that it's all in the G center, and that it creates, it's a representation of the cycles that we move through. I haven't seen him do anything like that, where he took another orientation. You could just because the gates are all consecutively. I mean, gate 61 and gate 37 are in the position that they are in, and you could count the gates in between and see the relationship between them, if you wanted to take it in.
Because they're the crosses.
But I'm not sure what
it's.
But the point of it being that it's a cycle. So the influence of that, and if we were to, I don't know, he had, for example, with circuitry, he said, pretty much for any there's as many circuits in the body graph as you can imagine,
yeah.
you know. Yeah, I mean, we have our basic ones, collective and logic and sensing. We have individual, and we have centering, and we have the integration channels and the knowing circuit. And then we have the mystical circuit, and we have the memory circuit, and we have the auditive circuit, and we have the, you know, all these sub circuits or not major circuits. In terms of this, we're looking at it in terms of global cycles.
Yeah, that's the key, is looking at the direction and love, and that's our access through time, watching. So we could continue to make more and more of these graphs that would take us down through the ages of all of the crosses of the background frequencies, and we could just keep going. Oh, I wish somebody who knows how to do video animation could do this for us. Wouldn't that be amazing, just to dive through the ages and continue to go down and follow the progression of what those crosses are to get to this point?
There is the lock, and this is where it gets fixed. The lock for the love, vessel of love, are the gates 25, 46, 10, and 15. And the lock for direction is gates 13, 7. And when you hear what the gates are, you already know that that's what it would be. But then the planetary program, or the expression of the filtering, the focus, the influence of it, is coming in through these others. But we actually, and Ra has, let's see if I got this here, our round of civilization from 16,000 years ago to 3,000 years, when we come up to 3,200. I'm not sure if I can see this okay. It blurs out. There is a progression that Ra has done of each of the eras where the lock and the key was shifting. And you can actually, when you look at it, it's pretty interesting to see what that particular era, what its focus was. Like we're saying here, you know, we can see in this period, it's really been so much about the building of civilization, you know, the tribal establishment of institutions and bonds and developing skills and working with the details in a logical way, so that we move towards the future and we are logical and we thrive in our bonds, and also the oppression of these bonds, you know, the community and the tribe. None of it's individual that we've been going through in terms of vessel of love. But in the cross of the Maya, we have gate 61. So the individuality that was there was like, what does it all mean? What is the mystery? You know, I want to know the unknowable, and name it. Gate 62, right? And transform it. In 2027, we're coming in, we're going to have gate 51. We're going to have gate 57, and we're going to have gate 55. And gate 34, you know, so we've got the sleeping phoenix is coming in, and we're going to have, you know, the 2034, very self-oriented,
self-empowered.
And then gate 55, 55, the spirit of the self and expression and creativity, and then gate 59, you know, power of intimacy. Energy for intimacy and penetration and that sort of thing. So we have a whole nother flavor coming in, and we can feel it already. I mean, it's not like when we come to 2027, it's like you flick a switch and okay, now we're in this one. You know, so that's, again, we were saying this in your previous class, and Ra was saying this, that the shift is being felt, and there is an attempt to hold on to what is known, because it's easier to, it's like the mind, you know, the mind wants to know how to deal with things. It doesn't want to not know. And because that's scary, you know, it's dangerous. But the nine-centered being and the rave, through its interconnectedness, no longer needs to fear the other. It's interconnected.
Recognizing.
But we have radicalism, we have fundamentalism, we have, you know, all these isms that are coming forward. We have regressive political leaders, and you know, I mean, he doesn't know, he doesn't have the 4037 Donald Trump, but he's got the 659, and then he's got the 2125. But people are really seeking the bond with him. You know, they want his tribalism because it feels safe and secure.
And Michael Grace Bauman is asking, how does the channel 5710 open to a personal love relationship? So now we're talking about something that's not necessarily Sphinx gates, but is that something that you feel like you have some juice on around explaining?
Yeah, well, what you're looking at is the vessel of love in gate 10, and is actually separate from the other 3 love gates, because it's also the role of the self, the behavior of the self, you know. And so, and then channel 5710 is the channel of perfected form, a design of survival. So how would that be in a personal love relationship? It's going to be, because if you have that channel and your authority is the spleen, then I mean, it's all going to be related back to your design, you know. So a personal love relationship, if it's in alignment with your strategy and your authority and the uniqueness that feeds into the full design, which has a specific strategy and a specific authority, but may also have something else defined, other things in there, has motivations and or a motivation and a perception and all these things. So we can't roll it down to a personal love relationship in that way, other than if you have perfected form, 5710, then anyone who meets you will be also inviting that, because it's a projected channel. So they will invite your capacity to perfect the form, to have intuitive awareness in the now of what is the proper behavior of the self in order to survive from the most mundane level to the exquisite existential levels of awakening.
Beautiful. And again, like you said, you can't isolate one aspect and make that the entirety of all 5710s are going to be like that. But what Darshana did is gave us a beautiful example at the end of what it could be like. So it really depends on how those are activated and in totality with the rest of the design. So when somebody has an undefined G center and their incarnation crosses the Sphinx and the love, which is what we're talking about, how do we work with those crosses? That's the question.
Well, first of all, you can't be on the cross of the Sphinx or the cross of the vessel of love and have a completely open G center, because the gates are in the G center. So whether it's defined or not, you're going to have, you know, whether the center is defined or not, if you're on either of those incarnation crosses, then you have activations. You have 4 activations.
Undefined, not completely open. Exactly.
It can't be completely open. So depending on what you meant with that. We all have a direction, and we all have, remember what definition does. What does definition do? Right? You know, it brings consistency. It brings a specificity. So if you have definition in the G center, then you have a specific way that you're, depending on what the definition is, you're expressing yourself in the G. And it doesn't do it any other way. It does it that way because that's the definition. And if you have it open, then you have just as much a sense of self as I do. I have no gates in the G center activated. Mine's a completely open G. I do have a sense of self. I do have a sense of direction and a sense of love, but I don't make decisions from that because there's no consistency in it. So my consistency comes from my splenic authority and my type, which is the strategy that brings in the right direction and the right love and the right sense of self that is in alignment with me as a splenic projector, right? So the consistency rolls back into where you have your type and your strategy and your authority. Then suddenly the openness no longer is really an issue, right? Because you have something to return to, even if you're a reflector.
And in that openness, we're here to be flexible and go with the flow, if you will. So being able to have, and Elaine is saying, so healing for me to hear that about an undefined G center. You're here to be a chameleon. You're not here to work with the crosses necessarily. I'm not sure what you meant by that, Anna, if you want to identify a little bit more what you mean by work with, but that at undefined G center with either of those crosses is going to be on, so to speak, or turned on by the environment and the person that they're with. And so their energy is going to be inconsistent. Their fulfillment of purpose. I'm thinking of a friend who has an incarnation crosses of the Sphinx, mental projector, so obviously no G center defined. And that ability to influence an other or guide another's direction, if you will come in the right timing, and it's not consistent. They don't emanate that or be that, vibrate that, broadcast that direction consistently out in the world. They're here to be receptive and then help guide, in that sense, with that kind of type, the other's direction with their Sphinx gates.
Yeah, and remember, anytime you have a gate, whether it's in an open center or an active gate in a defined center or part of a channel, but not part. In this case, I don't want to talk about ones in a channel. But anytime you have a hanging gate, that gate's always looking for what's on the other side energetically. It is. So if you have if you're on the vessel or if you're on the Sphinx, then people who have, let's say you have gate 31 in your design, and you meet a Sphinx who's doesn't have a defined G, but they're a Sphinx. That means they've got gate 7. So your 31 is going to go, whoa, that person's gonna, yeah, that's a 7. Okay, maybe, I mean, if your strategy and your authority is pulling you to that person. And then you're going to go, this person can lead me to the future. They have the role of leadership, and I've got the voice of leadership together. You can have the incarnation crosses in an undefined center, and mostly you will meet and be attracted to, and mostly those who will be attracted to you will be people who have the harmonic gate.
The other side of the channel, mostly.
Not necessarily, because there can be other things that are going on in the design. But for sure, their gates are going to see yours. Go.
A genetic attraction to what is different. We want that energy.
Yeah. There's hope for all of us in living our truth, in living the frequency that's in our design, right? There can also, I've met a lot of, and done readings for a lot of vessel of loves. And sometimes I get a bit mystified because I think, really? It's not like they wear love on their shoulders. It's not like they look like the embodiment of love, because that's not what it's about. It's about finding love through the bond, finding love through the details and through the skills. That's what it's doing now. And so, yeah. And that's the imprint of most of our lives. We, those who are born in 2027 and onwards will carry the frequency that is the cross of the sleeping phoenix. But we, even those who are born now, who are 10, will be 10 when we have the shift. They'll still be deeply influenced by the cross planning. But then the weather, we're all going to be feeling it, going, what has changed?
Yeah, it's very exciting to live in these times and to see it. It's less than now 10 years away, because a shift happens around February.
So that's interesting what Krista writes.
She says, my partner is a vessel of love and I'm a Sphinx, both projectors, and we are twin flame, different paradigm than human design. But I've been forming a theory about the connection between the G and twin flame. Darshana is really exciting my knowing about this relationship.
Yeah, nice. Well, it'd be interesting to, I don't actually know what the twin flame is.
Yeah, that's interesting to see the partnership of those two. Ooh, have fun.
Yeah, it would be really strong sense of self and direction. Ra said, before you can love yourself, you have to love being in the world. You have to love being in your body. You have to love those things first. Then you can find love for yourself. So if you're resisting the way, what it is to be in the world, then you'll never have the behavior that's necessary for you to allow you to find self-love. Go on YouTube and listen to Ra doing his early interview with that guy in Holland. Do you know which one I mean?
Which one you mean. Yeah, it's a really old one. I saw it in the very beginning. I can maybe find
Yeah,
it.
I was watching part of it again
With his hat, right?
recently.
Or was it a different one? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and it's kind of yellow
Uh-huh,
toned
uh-huh.
in it, but he's very young
Yeah.
in it, and it is such a succinct and beautiful way of hearing him again say what it is that human design gives us the possibility for. And he said something like, I keep telling people, love yourself, but really, as you can see and what we can learn from the vessel of love, that we will be seeking love, and we will be, we are beings that are looking for the direction, and not like we're lost, but that we're always in movement. So we're looking for our direction as we move, and to be the embodiment of ourself, of our design, of our uniqueness. So we do come here to love ourselves.
To be love.
To be love.
Not to actually
And
love an other necessarily. It's not necessarily the other. First, we have to love self, and it's not about necessarily even loving self. It's about being love, and that's a big difference, than an actual activity. It's not an activity or an action. It's a beingness that comes through.
And look at the channel of awakening. The behavior of the self in the now. And now, and now, and now, and now, and now. I wrote, one of my favorite things, I wrote Ra one time asking him a question about something. And he wrote this back, and I've never forgotten it. He said, it's about entering each millisecond as yourself. That's love. Each millisecond as a pressurized projector, 3-5 profile, channel transformation, judgment, driven and insatiable. Yeah, that's me. Right? And you. And each millisecond.
Beautiful. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Darshana. Lovely. Yeah. All right.
All right, sweeties. Thanks for being here. Look forward to those who can be here again next time to play with us and explore this amazing knowledge and the different journeys that it can take us on.
Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.